Done. Good.
Ooh.
So at least you can see my laundry that is left to do behind me.
Is my headset working?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. It was the webcam.
And we can see daylight saving time works. It's still light where you are, and it's light where I am. Yay.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy it while we can, because the European Union thinks it's necessary to debate daylight saving time, as if there's nothing more interesting to debate than abolishing daylight saving time.
It's bad for your health, I heard.
Yeah.
Flying to the US and back is also bad for you.
I guess.
Hi there.
Hey, Brendan, Kenneth, and Brendan.
Hey.
So it's 1 minute past 8. So I say let's get started. Let's start by sharing, I think, my whole screen with you. Yay. I hope you can see my notepad now.
Yes, we can.
Good. And some kind of waterfall. Anyway, so for the agenda tonight, Kenneth, I remember you wanted to tell decimals versus doubles.
Oh, Kenneth, your mic is not working.
Sorry, I'm always forgetting my microphone.
Yeah. Now you.
Yeah.
You're loud and clear.
Switch.
I'm not suggesting decimal versus doubles, I think, but we were talking about exponents, and I'm not very fluent in math.
Ah, no.
So,
And Michel isn't here, huh?
Huh?
And Michel is not here, our math guy.
No, but I think he made some valid points, and I'm not sure if we actually need to do anything. I think
I'm not sure
points
myself
are quite
either.
valid.
Well, so I think FHIR 1 to 2 or 4 is on our schedule. I think we want to spend. I think we want to spend some time on these two. 2. I mean, not 1. And permissive parsing. Maybe 1.3 plans. See if there's any leftovers from last time.
I probably have some questions regarding the. Let's see. There's an old issue. Like I like to pick up old stuff. But we can take that later.
Old issues, yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's about the parser stuff, so might be some difference between the newer parsers and the old parsers, but I don't know. We can talk about that if we have time.
Yeah. There's actually enough. The common project. Maybe. Web API has been done. Brian is not here, I think, because of the daylight saving time. It's now really early for him, or really late. One of the two. Oh, of course. Luke is here. I guess we want to talk. Yay. Net 4. .NET Framework 4. Yay. All right, and we'll do the action items if there's any time left. That's quite a list already. Is there anything else? So we had Kenneth suggesting
some parser stuff.
Yeah, Kenneth parsing stuff.
quote.
Yeah. Well, let's tackle the easy ones first, I think. Well, Framework 4, Luke. I saw you had a pull request in.
Yep. So took a look at the FHIR clients pull request that someone had submitted a while back and was determining whether that was going to be doable for .NET 4, and it will be just fine. No changes are necessary to be able to integrate that, so that's good to go. And also took a look at another pull request using for some async performance stuff that was also good to go for .NET 4.
That's amazing. That's new FHIR client that came way after .NET 4, so that still works on .NET 4.
Yes, it does actually. So Microsoft.NET.HTTP has effectively, and that's the .NET 4 version of System.NET.HTTP client, has basically the same API surface as System.NET.HTTP. So all the stuff that they've done there is going to be basically good to go in .NET 4.
So for Brandon and Brendan here on the call, Luke was here last time. He's the guy, you know, that about a month ago at this meeting, or was longer ago, we spoke about .NET 4 support, and there was someone who really wanted it. Here's Luke. And Luke had actually a pretty small pull request to re-enable Framework 4.
So I've actually expanded that pull request just a bit, just to be able to get the all the various unit tests actually running on both .NET 4, .NET 4.5.2, and then .NET Core 2.1. So all of those projects, where possible, I kind of standardized on the Visual Studio testing framework, which is supported across all those framework versions, and then expanded the target frameworks for the unit test projects to cover all of those, and then did a couple of small changes to the targets file so that basically when the unit tests are run, they're run for all the frameworks now.
Ooh, that's a nice addition.
Yeah. So if you want me to, so that's in my, right now it's just in the .NET 4 compatibility pull request. If you want me to split that out into another pull request to make it sort of easier to integrate this, then feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I can just keep it there if you want.
Yeah, that last bit, I mean, checking across platforms is actually pretty nice, whatever we do with .NET 4.
Yeah, I kind of figured as much. And so in running all of those tests, they were all fine. There was one slight compatibility difference between System.NET.HTTP for .NET 4 versus basically everything else, where the .NET 4 version doesn't escape, I think, square brackets and parentheses in the URL string, and so. And it's actually perfectly valid per the HTTP spec, but I just went ahead and sort of did a separate branch of that particular unit test to say if .NET 4, then it's gonna, this is the expected string to come back. Otherwise, everything else. But all the rest of the tests ran just fine across all three.
Oh, so that's why we have 48 changes here now.
Yeah. So it's a little bit bigger now, just because I had to go in and mess around with the project files and some stuff like that, and make a couple of API changes to get the test compatible with .NET 4 effectively. So feel free to have a look at it, suggest anything if you want me to split it off into
sure, the zip archive you need
yeah. So I have to use
that's been there for a while. We used it before. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Also, in here you changed testing frameworks, or is that what you did?
Yeah. So it looked like in most of the places it was using the Visual Studio testing framework, and a couple of places was using XUnit, and XUnit isn't supported on .NET 4. So where possible, I changed those. There are two projects. Let me actually just pull it up on my side. There are two projects that I didn't change because it was just way more work than I wanted to take on, and there were some dependencies that weren't going to work. HL7 FHIR path tests and specification tests are still the way they were, but the rest of the of the unit test should now be targeting a whole.
Right. Yeah. The whole reason there's X unit tests here is basically that is at some point we started to develop for .NET Core 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it was no X unit. The X unit was actually the only thing supported back then.
Yeah. And so now that Visual Studio is supported on .NET Core,
all my new tests are MS test again. So
okay.
Yeah. What are guys on this call using actually? Kenneth and Brandon.
Mostly MS test.
MS test.
I think XUnit is quite good as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is I actually prefer to use XUnit where possible with my stuff. The only reason I did the MS test stuff was that XUnit isn't compatible with .NET 4.
Right. And Brandon?
XUnit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I have never been a fan of XUnit because I somehow always had problems with their test runner in Visual Studio, or they broke in, or the code. I got debug messages inside XUnit instead of my own code. I must have done something wrong there, but yeah.
Well, that is mostly in the past.
Probably. Well. Anyway, I'm happy to standardize on one, and I think about 80% of the tests are on MS test, so I think we're stuck there anyway. So look, that's a lot of work for for .NET 4 compatibility. You really want.
Oh yeah, exactly. This is just I love doing this.
Yeah. You love .NET 4 so much.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just wondering there's just one thing I'm wondering about. I see this pull request is against develop R4. Would it be hard to look at doing this against develop SU3?
Probably not. I can take a look at that. I don't think there's anything in there specific to R4. So yeah, it should be relatively trivial to backport those changes to SU3 as well.
Okay, right. Yeah, because we need to support both.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
our normal flow is getting it from 3 to 4, or actually 2 to 3 to 4. But we're gonna, but I talked that a bit later. So.
So yeah, okay. I'll check that out and definitely report back to you guys.
Yeah. Okay. So let me take a look at that pull request.
Okay.
And
yeah, feel free to check.
We can probably go ahead. All right. Okay. Good. Then DSG2, next subject. The reason I mentioned this is I think 2 weeks ago in the call I already said it. We always had the plan of supporting just 2 versions of the spec. So say as soon as we do 4, we drop 2. And as we have published FHIR 1.2 now with R4 support, this is the time for us at least to actually say, well, this is DSG2. It works fine, but anything new and things that we're going to change, we're not going to apply to DSG2 anymore, but we'll start that with 3 and port it forwards to 4. There's lots of reasons why we do that. I mean, as you can see, many people do pull requests against 3 now or against 4. No one does against 2, or almost no one. And porting stuff forwards isn't always trivial, so it costs us a lot of time. So we are looking forwards to not having to support these two branch anymore. So I thought I'd mention it here to see what your initial reaction to that would be.
And then it was quiet.
And then it was quiet.
I mean, just from speaking as users of this library, I know all of our clients are moved off of DSG2 and onto STU3 at this point. So,
okay.
So fine with me.
I have no stake in DSG2 anymore. So.
And Brendan, I think you're 3+, right?
Yeah, we based all our code on 3 at the moment. But just sort of wondering, like, in terms of like the industry, isn't like all the Argonaut stuff still DSG2?
Yeah, it's definitely DSG2. So, but there hasn't been a lot of DSG2 has been functioning for a long while now, and it works. So I'm figuring most people that are Argonaut are using our library in .NET using DST2, and it just works, right? It's just that we are not going to add new functionality to it. So I always said, I can be moved to, if there's some blocking issue, to do some kind of hotfix on DST2, but that should be stuff that is actually blocking people from using it. It's just that we no longer add new functionality. So that stuff like mapping and validation, we have validation now, but and that works for DST2. It's just that we're not going to add functionality. So we figured also, if we look at the amount of downloads, it definitely looks like people keep their DST2 stuff in place. So when it works, it works. But I don't think there's a lot of new development done there. So I think we've reached a stage, well, that's my impression, where any system that uses DST2 is working and no one's touching it anymore. So we could as well decide to not touch our DST2 anymore. That's more or less our logic.
Cool.
Yeah, I know at least one of the major US providers, I think Cerner, is still only on DSU2, and they don't offer SU3 APIs yet.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. And they announced their R4 demo this week.
Oh, okay. Well,
so I know they've moved ahead. We speak to them regularly.
Okay.
And they have a good team working on this. So I know they're actually, it looks like they're skipping 3 then, right? Yeah, I know they have had free versions, but they're gonna showcase their R4 functionality soon.
Cool. That's good to know, actually.
Yeah. I guess now, I mean, like we did, everyone now many will be working towards R4, just like you, Brennan. R4 is on everyone's mind now, including our own. So having said that, maybe I move this agenda bullet one higher. We published FHIR for our library version 1.2 last Friday. And so that's the first non-beta version that has R4 support. So we're basically saying we have R4 support now in the .NET API. And I know we have a call tomorrow, I think, with you guys down there on my screen about this. But here's R4.
Yep.
Saves us a lot of questions as well, because many people are asking, why isn't class X that's in the 4 spec supported? Because obviously a lot of people don't have that pre-release checkbox on in their Visual Studio. So the newest version they saw was 0.97, which was from, I think, May last year. So it lacked a lot of the most recent R4 changes. So that's good for us too. Biggest change in, I think, the 1.x. Well, as I say, I don't know. Kenneth, your stuff is on 1.x or already was it on 1.2 or 1.1?
I pushed it up to 1.2.
1.2. Okay. Yeah. And Brendan, you were on 1.x family yet or not?
Yeah, we just moved over to, I think it's 1.1.
Okay. Yeah.
I've set up some pre-release. Actually, I've set up a build that does 1.2. I think there's some failing tests on our side, but I'm still not sure it's your code.
Okay.
I think some of the dates that it's using to validate the search, I think they're actually not valid dates for that circumstance. So I think the parsing that you have just might be a bit stricter.
Well, so yeah, it was stricter, and so that's the next bullet here: permissive parsing. We've discussed that a bit already. We had this set, the default set to permissive parsing false, and we got quite a lot of feedback, including from Brian and actually our own teams too, that that actually broke the interface because stuff that worked before didn't work anymore. And I probably discussed in this call that at some point I looked at having more fine-grained control over which errors would trigger and which would not, and it turned out that requires quite a lot more thought than just finding a quick and dirty fix in the 1.2 release. So what we've done actually is in 1.2 we have changed the default from permissive parsing to true, which means that at least it's not stricter than the previous versions, and it won't cause extra it should not cause extra errors in your code.
Is that 1.2?
Yeah, that's 1.2 final. So if you tested with 1.2 beta or 1.2 alpha, permissive parsing was still on false, but we chickened out basically, and I set permissive parsing to true in the final 1.2 release.
Right. Well, that's the only way. Sorry.
No, continue, Brendan.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the only way we got 1.1 is in there is by changing that setting back.
And everyone did. The Vonk team did.
Yeah.
I had to do that for the unit tests, basically everyone. So I was like, okay, so who are we trying to impress with our validation here? So permissive parsing. So when now at least when someone says in some of the discussion channels, hey, why do you let it pass? I'm like, okay, just flip the bit and you get the errors and you're done. So for 1.3 or maybe later, I don't know when I have time for it. We'll introduce some more fine-grained control over this, so you can catch basic, some of the more basic errors, but you don't catch some of the more involved errors. And it also means that our level of validation is back to pre-0 1.0. In 1.0, I just tried to be as flexible as I could with input. This changed a little bit in 1.0 and 1.1. And we're basically back to that level again, unless you flip this bit. So just as a heads up, I think our alpha and beta phase of 1.2 told us that we had to change permissive parsing to true as a default.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that on 0.96 and stuff like that, when it was true, we had trouble down the chain where you had XSD validation. So we didn't see it before it went further down the chain.
Yeah.
So that could also, it's not just in the context of your system. You can move on and then it crashes in some other places where if you have permissive parsing set to true.
Yeah, I mean, it was breaking the interface after all.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can just flip the bit, so then it will be fine. But I think it's something to be aware of when you develop systems that, like helsenorge.no, like the portal we're using. It's not just one system, it's several.
It has change behind it, yeah. So it might take us until 2.x before we can actually do some more fine-grained control. Maybe I'll just have to see. One thing we've been discussing is that there is a very shallow line, actually a gray zone, between what is validation in the parsers and what is validation in the validator for profiles. And one of my plans for the validator was, now it's one big library, or one big core. You call validator, you don't. And I wanted to split that up into separate smaller step validators that you can combine yourself. And I do think that this kind of validation, the more structural and type validation, we could maybe integrate into the same framework. So you have a whole range of validators going from validation of the more structural, maybe even syntax things, all the way until the more high-level profile-based validations, and you can configure yourself, or you configure them by set maybe. So here you have all the type-based validations. Here you have the profile validations. Here you have some set of custom validations. That's more or less what I'm playing with for 2.0. It's probably going to be summer. All right.
Forget about that one. I think we agree. There is no need for any changes.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I can just summarize. I think this was triggered because there's now a unit test that has a decimal value with some like E plus 290 or something. And this is R4, right? In R3, you basically couldn't easily make unit tests like that because you had to type like 290 characters, and no one did that. So everything fit perfectly into the decimal. But now Graham wrote a unit test that does something along these lines. and that doesn't fit a decimal anymore. So we felt that, well, it's not a unit test, it's an example. So we can't parse that example anymore. We could fix that by switching to double, but the standard also requires more digits of precision than in that case than the double could provide. So it's one way or the other. The way Graham does it is that he wrote his own decimal class that does all the calculation stuff, and you know, and it's nice to show it off, but I think it's unreasonable to expect every platform to do those kind of implementations. I'm imagining people use FHIR as a front end on top of existing systems. You can't expect any, you know, existing back system there to support these kind of numbers. So I think too, just like Kenneth, that we're fine where we are with our decimals.
Yeah.
And we just, you know, when reading the examples, we just skip this example. Maybe I'll ask Graham to change that example to something with some more reasonable exponent here, but I think he will just say, yeah, whatever you need to power up your decimal parsing and decimal math. But yeah, I think I'm refusing that.
Yeah, I fully agree. So yeah.
So that's that. Hey, is that Brian?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Brian.
What time is it there, Brian?
Sorry, I'm late.
Well, I remembered you saying that because of all the summertime stuff, you would be hard pressed to come here because it was at a very unreasonable time.
Yeah, it's 5:30, I think. Yeah, 5:30.
Yeah.
I definitely won't be on the next one.
Yeah, you mean the next one in 30 minutes? You
No,
want to be at a FHIR or it's cool. Oh yeah.
No, because we haven't gone into daylight savings yet.
Not yet. No, the US goes first, then we, and then you.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yep.
Gosh. Well, if the EU makes plans to change the European the way the Europe deals with daylight saving time, we should either synchronize with the US, or we sync with those with the Australians date wise, at least, not time zone wise, but date wise. But I think the EU will probably plan to just abolish the whole daylight saving. Yeah, believe it or not, that's important at the moment, as if there's no Brexit. Anyway, Brian, maybe most interesting for you here is that we shipped FHIR 1.2 final.
Yep. And you turn permissive passing off.
Yeah, to true for the default.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on your feedback and many others.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you.
We found that almost everyone in, you know, like in Vom code or my code in my unit tests, whatever I did, I had to switch it to true anyway. Most of the time because people order the elements wrong. That's the most caught error that caused me to turn it off. The order of elements, which of course in JSON doesn't matter at all, but it does in XML. So yeah, Kenneth, probably your XSD will pick up on that because that will check the order of the elements later on then.
Permissive parsing. Yeah.
Yeah, permissive parsing is false. Will catch orders of the elements, but if you switch it off, then your XSD will catch that in a later phase.
I'll make sure we switch it to off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want it off? Yeah, but depends. Well,
I'm a bit off. Yeah. But yeah.
All right. So that was decimal doubles. 1.3 plans. Since we shipped 1.2, we can look ahead at 1.3.
Did we do release notes for 1.2?
Yep, we did.
Some stuff on that. Okay.
So they are total. You know, they're in the documentation pages that, of course, no one reads. Let's see. Read the release notes. Here they are.
I didn't know about that.
Nah, you didn't.
Yeah.
So what I did today, actually, I put release notes right here. So I don't know if there's any better way. Oh, I love the fact that it's all green. That's nice. But so it's more to the top now, and you know, that's all I can do. I think I don't know what other things I can do to have the release notes more visible.
Yeah, put the release notes on this side, but we don't want to do that, right?
Well, then if you want to have them somewhere,
would
they'll
be in the
probably
wiki.
be hidden here in the wiki.
If you go back and then go to releases, you can
release.
down on the
Yeah.
Here?
Yep.
if you just add it there also, you can draft a new release and then on
The right top button.
right
Top.
Yeah, this draft new release. So this gets auto-created somehow. It says when we create a, oh, this is probably when we create a tag.
Yeah, so if you open that, click the, what do you call it? Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
And I say edit. I can put it somewhere here as well.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here. Ah. Oh, well, that's
I didn't know that as well.
I use it for my demo the demo validator. Let's see in our FHIR. Where is it? Oh, of course here. Because I that's how I distribute binaries. I knew about that, but I never thought about doing it this way. So here our FHIR validator demo, which uses the validator. It has actually releases too, and here I have the downloadable binary, so people can just download it and play with the validator tool. So I knew about this release tab, but yeah.
It's also a good idea.
Yeah. So it seems like a small release, but well, actually, there's been beta 1 and beta 2 with lots of fixes here. Mostly bug fixes, but also I worked on performance improvements. This is mostly for the Poco stuff, by the way. But there's some performance improvements all around. And support for R4, of course, was the big thing. Actually, this was funny too. Quantity now binds to code, not unit. It was actually a pretty big mistake that no one noticed somehow, but good. So those are the release notes. But you're right, Brian. I got more requests by email from people asking me where the release notes were. So that's what prompted me to put them up here. So 1.3 plans. I know that for a while we really wanted to look, and we would probably need to look at that new FHIR client PR that Luke already talked about. But we also have a pretty urgent need now to look at this. Pretty urgent, yeah. There's a lot of bugs in the validator. A lot. Well, no, that's not true. But we've accumulated validator bugs over the past month or so because we hadn't had capacity to work on them because we had to prioritize R4. So I do think it's time to actually look at those validator bugs first. It would be good to iron out some of those bugs before we restructure it over summer. So I said to Marco, maybe we should look at doing that. I don't know what your ideas are about the most urgent needs in the upcoming releases. Well, it's nothing that's easy for us.
You're asking what is the most important stuff?
Well, what would you? Yeah, what is it that you would like to see? Not saying we're doing it, but I'm just interested.
Yeah, I'm not sure if when I look at the parsing stuff, I'm talking about a little bit further down.
Mm-hmm.
When I do the two typed element, and if I have the whole specification in the interface with a very long name called
Structure summary provider. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's a nice one, right?
When I go to two typed element there and have the whole specification loaded, very slow. At least on the first run through.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that gets better on the second one.
Yes, it does, because everything is cached. Well, it depends on how you configure your sources, but it takes it. Actually, then where maybe we do the Kenneth parsing stuff now. That's what we're getting into. There's two tastes, and so whenever we're serializing or doing anything, we need type information. And so this type information can go from two sources, the POCO summary, definition provider, I'm saying, yeah. And there is the structure definition summary provider, I think.
Yeah.
So this has always been there, more or less. That does reflection on the attributes on the POCO model to figure out all the information for the types. That takes time because it's a lot of reflection, but that's always been the case. The first time you parse, and so that's cached. And this gets its information from any implementation of iConformance. No, I think iResource resolver.
Yeah.
So you can construct the resource resolver. You probably did it with, like, say, zip source dot, what is it? What is it? Default. What is it? Create default. Yeah.
Create default.
Yeah. If you use that raw like this, that's probably going to be really slow. So you do need a cached source. I think it's called around it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would hit. It basically parses structure definition time and time again if you do that. Yeah, you need to cache the definition somewhere. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty slow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have create validation source. I'm not sure if not create default, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, validation source. It could well be. Well, I could well be. I wrote the code, but zip source.validation source could well be it. But that's what the default does.
Yeah.
Just don't forget to put a cache around it.
Yeah. And that brings me down to let's see. I just need to bring up the code again. The old issue is 144 on your on the FHIR API.
144. That's old.
Yeah.
You want to? He was warning us.
This one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't anymore if you say permissive parsing is false.
No, of course, I need to do that. I had, of course, when I started testing this, I had just upgraded to 1.2. And then just removed the contained, contained resources.
That's why I closed it on August 1. I think I wrote a unit test back then to actually test the behavior. So this is.
So it should throw an exception if I use the FHIR XML parser.parse.
If you use the normal FHIR XML parser.parse, it throws an exception. Yeah. And if you use the typed element-based parsing, it either throws an exception, but if you subscribe to the error source, that property on the, I think I described it somewhere in the documentation. Let me just point it out to you. Now I have you here. FHIR API. I don't know if you, let's see, where did I put that? I wonder whether I documented it at all.
You can search also on the docs if you want.
I know there is a page somewhere that says we really should document this better. Parsing with our source node. Handling parse errors. Yeah, by default, parsing errors throws exception, but all parsers implement iException source to alter this behavior. See, handling errors for more information. That's where it is. Sorry, we should be writing this. Yeah. So currently if you do visit and catch on any source, it does that for you, and it will collect all errors in the list instead of throwing exceptions. And if you make all parsers implement iException source, and it means that there's a property that you can set a handler for, and if you set a handler on it, it doesn't throw exceptions either, but you neatly get callbacks instead of exceptions.
Okay.
But yeah, I should be documenting that.
Because I started testing this, there is an issue on the Spark server. And I was looking into that, hoping to close it, and then it didn't throw an exception. And that's why I started digging.
Yeah. So try again with the permissive parsing, and then see what happens if you put it to false.
Yeah, I'll do that. I can do that while we are on the call.
Oh, good. So in the meantime, I will progress to the 1.3 plans.
This is why you're putting in the note. So that POCO summary definition provider that does the reflection.
Yeah.
I have talked about doing a hard-coded version of that you could include.
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah.
That's not on my.
I didn't put it on the agenda because you weren't there yet when we started. Yeah. But that's right. It's in the action list, I think.
Okay,
did you do anything? Actually, we didn't.
I haven't done the removal.
No. Yeah. So did you get any further with that, Brian? It would be really cool to have that, but.
Yeah, no, I haven't yet.
I'll put it on the action list so we don't forget it. You can get it off of the list if you think you're not going to do it, but it's interesting to have it, Brian. Generate an implementation of summary definition provider. That would be quite fast. That's right. So back to our 1.3 plans. If we say validator bugs, do you say that's crazy, or is there anything else we should focus on?
Yeah, I can confirm that works.
Good.
So,
nice.
I can close that issue.
Yeah, the errors have improved a lot since the previous versions.
Yeah, so I'm trying to go through the old stuff and just see what I can close, what I need to focus on, and yeah. But yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, I was saying we're going to work on validator bugs, and unless we hear from you something really urgently, some urgent stuff that we need to do otherwise.
I think that would be nice, but yeah.
I think slowly, many of our users are getting into this validation. I get more and more questions about it, so I think it's about time because we tried to actually handle most of the other bugs. This bug is actually fixed. I just didn't pull the pull request yet. This one's been fixed. Actually, this should have been closed by now because it's in 1.2 already. Let me do this. I don't know why it was not closed, but it is. Or maybe because 906 got closed instead of this one. Yeah, this one is merged, so we can safely close this issue. Great. Marco and George have been squashing quite some bugs. So as you can see, many of the bugs carry the validator tag. So I'm really looking forward to getting these out of the way. This actually is our whole bug list. I'm pretty proud of that. No second page anymore.
Super.
Yeah, Marco and Georgia did a good job there 2 weeks ago, slashing a lot of those.
Yep.
All right. Then the common projects. So with the news that also Brian missed, Brian, we discussed that we're gonna no longer add new functionality to DSU2. So we're gonna work on STU3 plus R4 now for the common project. So this means that actually starting tomorrow, now we've published 1.2, Georgia will actually start creating a new project in the solution with a new assembly that contains stuff common across the POCOs for STU3 and R4. It won't be really ambitious this first time around, so just some of the interfaces that we know are shared already across the two of them, but it already will, start decreasing the number of lines that are exactly the same in the both branches, and so it will make our lives easier. And in the end, if we get down to actually getting resource into this part of the common project. That means that you can create code that works with resource, and it would work both on both 3 and R4. So that's of course one of the end goals where we want to go to. That being said, of course, if you really want to work independent of POCOs and resources, you work with I-typed element, as Kenneth has been doing. But this is for those people working with the POCO libraries. This is probably going to be a huge thing. So that's also in 1.3. So it's not just going to be validator bugs. We're going to start working on that common project as well.
I was
The question on that.
Yeah.
So just between the no DS2 changes, fully support that. Not complaining about that. Compatibility with having all 3 loaded at the same time. What we have today does that great. I just wouldn't want that to break.
How would it break, Brian? Because the interfaces are all the same.
As long as the those common stuff like the element library, the FHIR library, those dependencies that we use. So if those break, we'd have more dramas.
Ah, right. Yeah. But these libraries are already independent of POCOs, right?
Yeah, I was just making sure that if we stop doing 2, that we're still, even though we're not adding new functionality, as long as it's keeping up in terms of staying compatible with those versions.
Yeah, that's probably going to be true for the whole 1.x range.
Yeah.
But as soon as we get into 2, we could change these interfaces too if we needed. So then that would become harder if we need changes to the FHIR interface or the element library, which we might at some point. I mean, everything changes at some point in time.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't change it. I'm just saying that, like, for the servers that are going to do multi-version, so we're not far off that yet.
Yeah, you're right.
Or migration libraries. Or your mapper. So if it's doing mapping between 2 and 3 and 4. So I'm not fussed that they don't have feature compatible. I just need to not cause any issues between the shared stuff, dependencies.
Yeah, that's a good remark. Means that it really still pays off to keep these. I had no plans to change anything in 1.x anyway, but changing these interfaces is going to be painful for servers doing multi-version, including DS2. If your ambition is in DS2, that's fine, of course. But I can imagine that that would hurt. Yeah.
A common project. It will contain the resource and, of course, a bunch of other interfaces, but the data types, they are different across the...
Yeah, it would contain the data types that are needed for resource, which is a very small set.
Yeah.
Georgia inventorized those, and those are compatible except for meta, but that was in DS2 too. I should look again at 3 and 4 because meta had changed from 2 to 3, the order of the elements, I think. And in R4, there was an addition of source, but additions are fine.
Yeah.
And we still have that code now that, and Georgia has been fine-tuning that. We have a Roslyn extension that would, if you do multi-version, would point you out where you are using stuff that exists in one version but not in another.
Okay. So
we're going to do this slowly, the common project. So probably going to report about that often. And so I said to Georgia, let's take this step by step to see if we encounter any practical problems before we. So I think 1.3 will just introduce the first, assembly with some very easy interfaces like extendable and maybe base and element, maybe not element, base. And so just to see whether that causes any grief before we move on.
Because what I was noticing in Spark is that it's doing some indexing magic on the data types. Then I would need element model anyways, I guess.
I don't remember what I did in Spark. Did we do what are you referring to?
There is some extensions method called toExpression, which take
yeah, you mean
and it's great. It does the indexing.
Yeah.
So, I can't move to the common project, at least not in the first iteration.
Because you need more, you mean?
I need more, yeah.
You need resource probably. Or what would you need?
All the data types.
All the data types, yeah.
And I guess they're different from R3 to R4.
Yeah. For this, you need I-typed element. Yeah, that's right. If you want to really want to be independent of versions, you make that step, or you keep on loading all the assemblies. But that's well, if you go to R5, R6, R7, that becomes, I think, slowly becomes a problem. Though that's what we'd like to fix. Well, so we have to look again at what how much the data types have changed from SU3 to 4. If that's reasonable set and it's doable, then we can try to get those into the common project.
So the common project's going to end up being 2.0, right?
So these big changes, yeah, but I'm gonna start with it in 1.3.
Yeah.
With the simple things, because I want to know if this causes any grief before we take the big leap of moving everything over.
Okay.
And if you do resource, would you do domain resource too? Like that's another inherited one. Yeah.
So domain resource, slightly because it has a few more.
Yeah. But basically everything with a narrative will come off domain resource.
Yeah, narrative is in domain resource, and its extension probably as well. No, that's on resource already. Yeah, I don't know anymore. Oh, these are the details that I always forget.
Domain resource.
Where are you? Domain resource. Domain resource. Yeah, that introduces extension. Yeah. So I don't think narrative has changed anything across those versions, so we should be okay there. Extension hasn't seen any change either. So I don't think domain resource would be a problem.
Just be the types going into contained, but I think that'll be okay anyway.
Yeah, because that's the resource type or the element type. So as long as we can manage that, we're fine.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, let's go over the action items. Let's see, where are they? Last time's action items, I had them, yeah. So when does your summertime kick in again, Brian?
After Easter, I think it is.
After Easter. So in 4 weeks, when we have another call at this time, you're still not in summertime. Winter time, actually, for you. Yeah.
It'll be winter time, I think. I don't think I'll make the next one.
Yeah. And then after that, you'll be out of problems. Okay. But next time in 2 weeks will be European time, which will be okay for you, I think.
Yeah.
So with the code for the analyzer, that's done. So those interested in seeing the Roslyn extension to see whether you're using R4 specific stuff is there, with at least in some prototype form. So we will start to split up the common code for real. So this is going to start tomorrow. Sunsetting DSU2, we've done that too. Now, the unknown code in all enums, have you looked at that, Brian?
No, I haven't had a chance.
I think you pulled out the stuff, the web API stuff.
Yep. So that's now, it got its own repo. I've got an internal NuGet package that I've been pushing to. So it's not public there yet. There's no reason why not.
Yeah.
Don't remember why I chose not to do that as yet. And yeah, so I just haven't had a chance to go and commit anything back to the core libs yet.
Yeah. So shall I keep this here?
Yes,
Oh.
please.
Yeah. Look, done, I'd say.
Yep, and I will also backport my changes to STU3 as well.
Right. That's yeah. Okay. That's. And Brian, PR for the develop branch.
Yeah.
To remove actually the code, right?
Yeah, correct.
Because we
Yeah.
haven't done that.
Yep.
And B, there's some stuff that you want to put in there, or is it
Yeah,
just removal?
I've still got some stuff coming through, but yeah.
I think that is good if that would be 2 pull requests to make it easier
Yeah,
for us,
will
for
be.
the maintainers here.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Brian, connect to set up targeted meeting to these different interfaces for the web API. I think I saw something on Zulip, but that was slightly related, but not this, I guess.
No, I can't remember seeing this, but no. We haven't set up a targeted meeting.
Okay, so we keep that. And Brian, to show us web API injection problem next time. Well.
After going through it, it's not that bad, so I can just take it off the agenda. Yeah.
Okay. Web API.
It's not as good as I was hoping, but it's not painful to work with at all. So.
Okay. All right. Well, good. That was the action items then. So I think we've dealt with anything. Are there any more last things you want to get off your?
There's an issue 900, I think. Which was added.
Yeah.
This one. Are you going to look at this, or do you want somebody else to look at this? Do you want anybody down in your FHIR code at all?
I've been thinking about this, and actually, because it's so dynamic, because last time we talked about adding that stuff to the symbol table, but I think that's way too static. You might want to change those variables from call to call, right? From invocation to invocation.
Yeah.
So having this in the symbol table doesn't really work. I think if you agree, what we need to happen is if we see these ones, we actually do a callback to the environment that you pass to the validator. Right? If you run a statement, you can pass in an evaluation context. I think those should have those variables, but it's way more dynamic. We can have a callback from the FHIR path evaluator calling the environment saying, hey, I met these environment variables. Do you want to supply those to me? Yeah. And then you can change them from invocation to invocation. Yeah. So if you want to take a look at that, Kenneth, I would be really happy.
I'll see what I have time for. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great suggestion, actually. Yeah. I'll see what I'll look into it. I guess it's not something that is very urgent, or yeah.
No, but I can definitely see the need. So yeah. Good, excellent. Anything more? Good. Well, thanks for all your work and cooperation, and I guess we'll be seeing each other soon enough again. in the next days, or otherwise in about 2 weeks. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
So thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye bye.